that were made. So let's get into it. So Son of Man is actually in the construct form in Judaism. I'm going to go ahead and go through that when we switch over to Chrome. But just briefly, the construct is a chain of words in Hebrew, which is supposed to kind of let you know a new way, a new concept. It introduces things in a new concept, and it usually gets translated with an of, right? But sometimes not. And it's used in the Hebrew prophets, right, as a term of humility, and it is contrasted with the term sons of Elohim. And people who know me know that I usually don't say the word Elohim because when it refers to God, we don't actually say it, except in certain usages. However, the word is also used in other ways in the Hebrew. And one of the ways that it's used is to describe people who are powerful. Okay? And we'll talk more about that, but I just wanted to kind of explain what exactly the Son of Man construct chain looks like. Now, the letters in black are Ben and Adam, which mean Adam, Adam, right? A man or Adam, and the word son, right? So son of Adam is a human being, and the letters in red are the definite articles, which in Hebrew are prefixes, okay? And actually, in biblical Hebrew, we never really get we never have the definite article on any of the other members of the construct chain other than the last one. In Mishnaic Hebrew and modern Hebrew, there's been a tendency that when people are trying to be very specific, they've started using also like using the article on not just the final form, but that's not really grammatical in the Hebrew. Okay, but I wanted to show it because we could also kind of try to figure how maybe Jesus might have said the things a little bit differently, and that's actually what some people want to claim. But it's not really something that happens. So let's go over to the so this is the Unfolding Word Hebrew Grammar, which is a very useful site which has a lot of information from linguists, biblical linguists. And I actually think they might just be a little bit overdoing it. I don't know that Hebrew is as formal as they would like it to be. I think natural languages aren't really that as formal as linguists kind of try to make it. But I always found them very useful. And so regarding the state construct, they say the state construct is a modified form of a word, noun, adjective, participle, or infinitive, in contrast to the standard form called the absolute state. The construct state is used when a word takes a suffix or is connected to another term in a construct chain. Okay? Now, as far as the article, right? So what it says is because the construct state serves a unique function in Hebrew, biblical Hebrew, to grammatically link a word to the following word or words, making a single grammatical unit called a construct chain. Words in a construct chain are often translated into English with the word of between them. Construct chains can consist of two words, for example, the king of Israel, right, Melech Israel, or more than two words, for example, the sons of the king of Israel, Bnei Melech Israel, right? And one of the things that they say about forming a construct chain is two or more terms that are grammatically linked together to form a construct chain can express a wide range of meanings. The initial terms in a construct chain always appear in the construct state and is called the construct noun or nouns. The final term in a construct chain always appears in the absolute state and is called the absolute noun. The absolute noun always determines whether a construct chain is definite or indefinite, right? So, like I said, when we had Ben Adam, right? In biblical Hebrew, the way you make Ben Adam, the son of man, or the human, right, is you say Ben Ha'adam. So you add the article to Adam, right? The second word, not the first word. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at some of the times it's used. Now, you will notice this that Wikipedia has two articles, has a main article on the concept Son of Man, has a, a one for Judaism, and has one for Christianity. Okay? And the one for Judaism has all the various places that it's used. Now, just the word Ben Adam, the first time that it's used is in Numbers 23:19, which we'll take a look at. But earlier in Genesis, forms of it are used, and I think Genesis 6:2 is actually very instructive because there it's being used as a in contrast to B'nai Elohim, right? Which the traditional Jewish interpretation of that is the sons of powerful people, right? There are other interpretations saying that it's actually talking about angels. But similarly, this, in any case, Ben Adam is a term of humility, oftentimes contrasted with divinity, right? And I personally think that Jesus was using it specifically. There are some scholars who actually think that it's a later invention, that Jesus didn't actually use that term himself. I don't really see how that would be, but here in Genesis 6:2, you'll see that there's the B'nai HaElohim, and it's contrasted with Benot Ha'adam, right? The daughters of man. And if we look at the Targum Onkelos, which is the kind of official Hebrew, Aramaic translation that we use in Judaism, you'll see that it says, B'chazo b'nei Ravaya yat benat enasha, right? Enasha. And in Aramaic, like we'll see when we go back to the PowerPoint, the article is actually that suffix with the aleph at the end, right? So in Hebrew, the article is a prefix. In Aramaic, the article is a suffix. Okay, but just like in Hebrew, it goes on. Um, it goes on the final word in the construct chain. Okay, so also in Genesis 11, again, this isn't the word Ben Adam, it's B'nai Ha'adam, right? It's talking about God and the Tower of Babel, and it says that God came to see, right, what the sons of men uh, had built, right? Banu B'nai Ha'adam, right? So B'nai is the plural of Ben, right? So sons, Ha-Adam. So it has that article there, and it goes with Adam, right? So the sons of men, right? So the human beings. Okay. Similarly, if we look at the Onkelos there, it says, am I looking at the correct one? 11:5. There it is. Okay. Ve'itgale havaya letper'a al ovade karta Magdala di beno bene enasha. Right? Bene enasha. So it's in the plural, bene, right? Enasha is it has that it has the definite article at the end, and anash means man, right? Okay. Now let's look at Numbers 23:19, which is the first time that that precisely Ben Adam is used in the Bible, and this particular verse is one that I quote a lot, and people who disagree with the Trinity quote a lot. Numbers 23:19 says that God lo ish kel, right? God is not a man veyichazev, that he should lie, uven adam veyitneham, and he is not man that he should yitneham. Now this is an interesting word. I might just do a whole video just on the word yitanaham. Usually this is translated as change his mind, right? So God does not change his mind. What exactly that means, in certain places, it seems to be using a similar word to regarding God. This is one of the two times that it's in the hitpa'el form. That's in the reflexive form, and the other time it's not referring. The other time where it is in the reflexive, I believe there's only one other time when it's in the reflexive, and I might do a whole video on that. It's actually talking about a human being again, right? So whether God nahams, whatever that root means, comfort is actually how I would do it. He doesn't do it to himself, I would say. But we have that Ben Adam for the first time, right? And you will see in the Onkelos, right? La Kemile B'nai Enasha, right? So, like men. B'nai Enasha, again, he's second time. And then B'nai Bisra, right? Which means flesh. So that's that one. Now, what you will see if you look at the listing here of all the various times in the Bible is that it's actually used many, many, many times in Ezekiel, right? Many, many times, right? and it is used as a term of humility. So Ezekiel 2:1. Vayomer Elai ben Adam amod al raglecha va'adaber otach. So, and God said to me, Ben Adam, son of man, Amod, stand up, al raglecha, on your feet, and I will speak to you, avadaber otach, right? So this term is used as a term of humility, that I am a person, right? So that I am a human being. Now, what the Christian interpretation has always been is that actually there was a belief that because this term gets used in the Aramaic, okay, so in this is Daniel 7:13, and Daniel is written in Aramaic, right? And there is this figure that shows up, right? Kevar Enosh, right? Like Bar Enosh, like son, man, like a person, right? So let's go back to the PowerPoint, and we can see what we mean in the Christian usage. So in the Christian usage, the idea was that in Daniel, this word Kebar Enosh is a specific title, right? And that when Jesus used that title, that everybody around him would understand that that was referring to Daniel, okay? Because it was in Aramaic, and the idea was everybody understood that in Aramaic, Bar Enosh was this heavenly figure who would come and be the Messiah. And so whenever Jesus was speaking in Aramaic, he would use this term, and people would understand this is this is a specific term, right? Now, well, let's. Okay, so let me show you. Now, I put in the definite article on the word bar, which means son, right? Because I wanted to, if Jesus wanted to kind of say something strange, the idea might be that he might like put an article on the word bar, right? So he would be talking bar nasha, right? The problem with that is that in Aramaic, the word nash and anash both mean the same thing, and this is just a weird thing about the Aramaic word anash and nash is they just mean the same thing, and I personally think there's a linguistic miracle here, and that's what I talked about in to Sam on his channel. But so the blue here is the chaf, which is as a man, right, as a son of man. So that it's not there's no article there, but I mean that is the Christian understanding. Now let's go back and take a look at the scholarly debate. So the scholarly debate, and I am going to use what the Wikipedia article says. Obviously, there are citations here. Wikipedia is not a source, but I do use it as a resource for looking things up. And so this here is their explanation of how exactly it's used, right? In the Koine Greek of the New Testament, the Son of Man, the Hebrew expression "Son of a Man" also appears over 100 times in the Hebrew Bible, like we talked. In 32 cases, the phrase appears in intermediate plural form, "sons of men." Okay. Um, the expression of the Son of Man appears 81 times in the Koine Greek of the four Gospels, 30 times Matthew, 14 times Mark, 25 times Luke, 12 times in John. However, the use of the definite article in the Son of Man is novel, and before its use in the canonical Gospels, there are no records of its use in any of the surviving Greek documents of antiquity. In the Christian scriptures, Jesus uses the reference for himself more than Son of God. And there are actually some times in the King James Version where actually the manuscripts have been corrupted, and it's actually some of the times the King James Version has Son of God. It's the older manuscripts are actually Son of Man. The attributes given to the Son of Man in the Christian scriptures seem to correspond with those found in the book of Daniel of the Hebrew scriptures, Daniel 7, 13 through 14, right? Like I described. The New Testament claims in Revelation that Jesus will come to earth on the clouds of heaven, and he will be given unending dominion and authority. It describes him as the ruler of the kings of the earth, to be served. Now, what has happened in the past 100 years or so is that there has been a lot of more archaeological discoveries, including Nag Hammadi and the Dead Sea Scrolls. Sorry, and there's also been better Hebrew scholarship, and one of the people who's considered one of the best Aramaic scholars is Geza Vermes, and this is what he has kind of. This is how he kind of made the debate, right? Has stated that the Son of Man in the New Testament is unrelated to Hebrew Bible usages. Vermes begins with the observation that there is no example of the Son of Man in Hebrew sources, and suggests that the term originates in Aramaic as just Bar Nash, right? Or Bar Nasha. He concludes that in these sources, Son of Man is a regular expression for man. Okay, and we're going to take a look at some instances where that could be in general, and often serves as an indefinite pronoun, and in none of the extant texts does Son of Man figure as a title. So if you are going to view the Son of Man in a very different way, then possibly what Jesus was talking about was just people. And I'll explain what we mean by that. So here we have Matthew 8:20, and this is one of the ones where it seems that Jesus is clearly not necessarily talking about himself. He's talking about all of humanity. So this is the NIV. Jesus replied, "Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." Okay, and we're going to look at how the Pshita translates that. but let's look at Mark 12:8, right? So this is the famous Lord of the Sabbath, right? Where Jesus claims, according to Christian theology, claims to be the Lord of the Sabbath, right? So he says, for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. And we're going to take a look at how the Peshitta looks at that. And then there's Mark 2:28, which is a parallel thing, the Lord of the Sabbath, right? Then Jesus declared, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to the slides and take a look at how the Peshitta that translates that. Okay. So the first instance when we were looking at Matthew, right? So the Peshitta translates it bar a denasha. Okay, so bar nash or bar nasha is how we would expect it to be. But instead, they translated it bar a, right? And that hey there at the end, that's not an article. That is a suffix that's his, right? So his son, and then they put a hard of in there, right? The dalid in there, so that we're no longer in a construct chain anymore, right? So it's bar a de nasha, so his son of the man, right? Um, there now the next one they translate even more strangely. Let's look at that. Um, this is for Matthew 12:18, the Lord of the Sabbath one, right? And what the Peshitta translates is bar a din venasha. So the previous one was bar a denasha, and here they even put this din, right? This or that, right? A specifier between son and man, so that you wouldn't get the wrong idea. Well, what is the wrong idea? Um, let's look at how Mark is actually translated fully. This is the Pshita of Mark 2:27. Va'amar lahon the Shabbata mital barnasha itberit vela hu barnasha mital shabta. Right. So it actually has barnasha twice. Right. It says that the Sabbath was made for man, and man was not made for Sabbath, right? You see bar nasha, right? And that's how you would expect, because that's what it says, human, right? Well, how do they translate Mark 2:28? Maraho hakil va'af de shabta bare de anasha, right? So he is a master of everything and even of the Sabbath, his son of man. Now, if you were to translate it just using Barnasha, like you would expect, well, it actually makes even more sense than it does in the way they're translating it. Now, I personally believe that the people who were translating to the Pshita probably thought that Jesus originally spoke Greek. Obviously, most people don't believe that anymore. Um, it's a very rare position. That some Eastern Orthodox branches actually believe that the Pshita is the Aramaic original. That's a hard thing to make, not just because of these strange um, translations, which seem to be trying to preserve the Greek theology in them, but also because there are places where it's kind of like, it translates it and it says, and in the Aramaic, well, which is Aramaic for, right? Like, you know how you have in the Greek where they translate the Aramaic to the Greek. The Pshita has the Aramaic, which it says, which is Aramaic for, right? Uh, doesn't work so well. But that's the idea of Pshita primacy, right? Which you can also look at all the scholarship, and there is a Wikipedia article on that as well. But if we were to translate what in a more natural way, not trying to preserve, um, not trying to preserve the Greek theology, but just trying to understand what what to reconstruct what Jesus said in order to try to understand what he said. Um, that's gonna, I mean, honestly, it makes more sense, but it's not the Greek theology. Jesus is simply talking about human beings. And that is the view of the prominent scholar Geza Vermes. And his um, I find his arguments persuasive, and honestly, um, I think the only reason there maintains an argument is because it would create a huge theological change for Christians if, when Jesus was talking about Barnage, when he was talking about the Son of Man, he wasn't actually, and I believe this is the truth, he wasn't actually talking about himself. He was giving instruction about how humanity is to be viewed, and how human beings are to treat each other, right? He talks about the importance, and this is something that the Pharisees of Jesus' time and later had to argue with other members of Second Temple Judaism, right? Because and this is another thing we discussed on with Sam. Um, yeah, it's honestly the the reason why the Pshita goes out of its way, and I have to say, I find this translation to be egregious, right? Baret in the Denasha, um, is because if if you are trying to reconstruct Jesus simply, and you believe Jesus spoke in Aramaic, and you are trying to understand what Jesus taught, it seems pretty clear to me what Jesus was teaching. Um, I don't think Geza Vermes, I believe he was actually a Christian, but even if he wasn't, his arguments are pretty persuasive if you ask me. Um, If anybody has any questions, please feel free, either right now, go ahead and put them in the comments, or we can continue this discussion on the Bridges of Meanings server. Certainly, if you want to comment on the original video that I did with Sam, we can also have the discussion there. But yeah, this is the Son of Man debate, and like I said, it's actually probably become the biggest debate within New Testament studies of the past 100 years. Certainly, from what I have been told, in terms of ink, in terms of the number of articles that have been written discussing it back and forth, this may be the biggest. This is the biggest debate in Christian studies. As always, I would like to finish off with the verse in Zephaniah 3:9. Ki az epoch el amin safar bara likro hulam Hashem havaya le'odo shtem echad. That when the Messianic era does arrive, we will think, hopefully, and as God has promised us, there He will restore a pure language to all of the peoples, so that we will all be able to call God in God's name and to serve Him together. Hope this has been